I caught my spoiled sister kissing my boyfriend a week before her wedding. I told her fiancé thought he ignored it, but he surprised everyone at the wedding. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I recently went through one of the most difficult situations of my life, involving my younger sister Helen, 26, and my boyfriend Luke, 29. Helen's wedding was fast approaching, and although I was initially happy for her, I gradually began to notice something strange in her behavior. At first it wasn't anything obvious, just subtle gestures that made me uncomfortable. Innocent comments like, "Wow, you're so funny," every time Luke made a joke, even when it wasn't particularly amusing. Her laughter was exaggerated, overly enthusiastic, as if she was constantly trying to get his attention. I tried to ignore it, telling myself she was just excited about the wedding and maybe acting more sociable than usual. But over time, I began to notice more concerning signs. She found excuses to touch him subtly, placing her hand on his arm during a conversation or brushing against him accidentally as she passed by. Small details that added up to a clear pattern. The worst was when I noticed her gaze. When Luke wasn't paying attention, Helen's eyes lingered on him for too long, with an intensity that made my stomach churn. One night, after a family dinner where Helen had been especially flirtatious, I decided to talk to Luke about it. "Did you notice how Helen behaved tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He frowned, clearly surprised by my question. "What do you mean?" I explained what I'd been observing: the exaggerated laughter, the unnecessary touches, the lingering looks. Luke listened patiently, but after a moment he just shrugged. "I think you're overreacting. She's probably just excited about the wedding. It's nothing bad." I wanted to believe him, to convince myself my intuition was wrong. But deep down, something told me it wasn't. It wasn't just my imagination. Something didn't add up. So I decided to stay alert, hoping my mind was playing tricks on me. But in the following weeks, the tension between us became more evident. Every time we were together, I noticed how Helen found ways to be near Luke. If there was an empty seat next to him, she took it without hesitation. If there was a wedding-related task that needed help, she always managed to ask him, even if I was there. Then came the day that confirmed my suspicions. We were at my parents' house for a family barbecue. At one point, I went to the bathroom, and when I returned to the garden, I saw something that made my heart stop for a second. Helen and Luke were in a secluded corner of the yard, talking in low voices. The closeness between them wasn't normal for a future brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Helen let out a syrupy laugh while looking at Luke with an expression that made me feel sick. As soon as they saw me, they both stepped back quickly, and Helen walked away as if nothing had happened. I felt a mix of anger and fear. My intuition hadn't lied to me, but I decided not to make a scene in the middle of the family gathering. I waited until we were alone at home that night. I sat in front of Luke and took a deep breath before speaking. "What were you talking about with Helen this afternoon?" His reaction was one of genuine surprise. "We were just talking about the wedding. About the music, I think." His answer didn't convince me. "And why did you have to be so close to her for that?" Luke sighed, visibly frustrated. "Babe, there's nothing weird about this. She's just being nice. I don't know why you keep seeing problems where there aren't any." "She's not just being nice, Luke. She's flirting with you, and you know it." My voice trembled between anger and despair. I wanted him to tell me I was wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding. But instead, his expression changed. He looked hurt by my words. "What do you want me to do? She's your sister. I can't just tell her to stay away from me without it seeming like I'm overreacting." "You could set boundaries," I replied firmly. "Make it clear there's no room for any insinuation." But he shook his head. There's nothing to clarify because nothing is happening. You're obsessing over this. We argued for hours without reaching any conclusion. Finally, we went to bed with an emotional distance that hadn't existed between us before. The next day, I realized I couldn't keep avoiding confrontation with Helen. I called her and asked to meet at a cafe. She agreed without hesitation, with the same carefree tone as always. When we met, she seemed in a good mood, excited about the final details of the wedding. I, on the other hand, was nervous. My hands trembled as I stirred sugar into my coffee. Finally, I couldn't hold back. Helen, we need to talk about something important. Her smile disappeared. What's wrong? I took a deep breath. I've noticed how you behave with Luke, and I don't like it. You laugh too much at his jokes, find any excuse to touch him, and you look at him like... I swallowed hard, feeling vulnerable. Like you like him. Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes widened in disbelief before narrowing into a frown. What are you talking about? That's not true. Yes, it is, I insisted. And I want you to stop. Helen let out a dry, dismissive laugh. You're being ridiculous. Luke is like a brother to me. But there was something in her expression, a slight tension in her jaw, that told me my words had hit the mark. It's not just friendship, and you know it. Her face turned red with anger. Are you accusing me of something? Don't you trust him? I felt a knot in my stomach. It's not just about him. It's about respect between us. You're my sister, Helen. I don't understand why you're doing this. Suddenly, she stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor of the cafe. I'm not going to listen to this nonsense. If you have insecurity issues, that's your problem, not mine. And with that, she left, leaving me alone with a lump in my throat and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. I stayed seated in the cafe for several minutes after Helen left, trying to process what had just happened. I stared at the untouched coffee cup in front of me and felt my stomach churn with a mix of frustration and sadness. I had hoped that, by confronting her, she would at least have the decency to acknowledge her behavior, but instead, she minimized it and became defensive. When I finally left the cafe, the cool afternoon air hit me squarely, but it didn't manage to dispel the oppressive sensation in my chest. I didn't know what to do. If I told my parents, they probably wouldn't believe me. And Luke, I already knew his stance. I arrived home feeling exhausted. I'd barely shut the door when Luke appeared in the living room. He looked at me with a frown as though he could read on my face that something had happened. Did you talk to Helen? He asked. I nodded slowly as I placed my bag on the table. Yes. He waited for me to say more, but when he saw that I wasn't continuing, he pressed on. And what happened? I sighed and crossed my arms, feeling vulnerable. She denied everything. She said I was being ridiculous and that she was just being nice to you. She got angry and left. Luke ran a hand through his hair and let out a frustrated sigh. I told you this was nothing. His tone was a mix of exhaustion and impatience, which made the anger within me grow. I'm not imagining it, Luke, I exploded, feeling my patience wearing thin. Why do you keep acting like I'm crazy? I saw her flirting with you. I saw her finding excuses to touch you. I saw her looking at you like... I stopped before finishing the sentence. I didn't want to say it out loud. I didn't want to give it that power. Luke shook his head. I don't know what else to say. I already told you I'm not interested in her. That's not enough, I replied, my voice trembling. I need you to set clear boundaries. Tell her to stop. He looked at me for a long moment before sighing again. Look, if it makes you feel better, I can try to talk to her. But I assure you, Nothing will change because nothing is happening. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was hitting a wall over and over. And the worst part was the feeling of being alone in this. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the conversation with Helen and Luke's indifference. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of them together at the barbecue. The way Helen looked at him. The way he did nothing to stop her. The following days were awkward. Helen avoided talking to me, and Luke acted as if nothing had happened. My mother noticed the tension between us and called me one day to ask what was going on. "Did you two have a fight?" I didn't know how to answer. If I told her the truth, I knew she would probably side with Helen. She had always been the favorite, the spoiled child of the family. If I said anything, they would likely accuse me of being jealous or paranoid. "It's nothing," I finally said. "Just sister stuff." But I knew things weren't right. My heart started pounding. Something inside me told me I wasn't going to like what I was about to see. With slow steps, I approached the garden. And I saw it. Elena and Lucas were together, hidden behind some large plants. They were so close that their bodies practically melted into one. Their lips were locked in a passionate kiss. There was only 1 week left until the wedding, and the tension in the air was unbearable. And then, what I never imagined happened. It was a warm and sunny day when I decided to go to my parents' house. I needed to clear my mind, to try to find some peace before Helen's wedding. But when I arrived, I heard something that made me stop. It was voices, whispers coming from the side of the house. My world stopped. For a moment, it was as if the air had been ripped from my lungs. I felt a void in my stomach, a blow so strong it almost knocked the breath out of me. Elena had her legs wrapped around Lucas's waist, while her hands shamelessly explored his body. They kissed as if the world around them didn't exist, as if I didn't exist. A strange sound escaped my throat, a gasp of disbelief, of shock, of pure pain. And then I screamed, "What the hell is this?" My voice echoed in the garden like an explosion. Elena and Lucas jumped as if they had been electrocuted. They separated abruptly, their faces full of guilt. Elena paled when she saw me, her mouth trembling as she searched for words she couldn't find. Lucas opened his mouth trying to speak, but only managed to stammer a pathetic excuse. "No, it's not what it looks like." But it was. It was exactly what it looked like. I felt a burning in my eyes, but I refused to shed a tear in front of them. "How could you do this to me?" My voice came out broken, shattered. Elena tried to approach me, tears in her eyes. "Sister, please, I stepped back as if she had touched fire. "Number, don't you dare." Lucas took a step forward. "Let me explain." But I didn't want to hear it anymore. Without saying another word, I turned and left, ignoring their desperate calls. I don't remember how I got home. I only know that when I did, the first thing I did was grab my phone and write a message. "It's over. Don't ever look for me again." I sent it to Lucas and then turned off my phone. I had no idea what I would do next. I just knew I couldn't stay. I grabbed a suitcase and threw in the first things I found. A few changes of clothes, my wallet, my keys, and I left. I drove aimlessly until I found a cheap hotel in another city. I checked in, went up to the room, and finally let the tears flow. I cried until the pain in my chest became unbearable. Everyone had made me feel like I was crazy, like I was imagining things. But in the end, I was right. Elena and Lucas had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now, I didn't know how to move forward. I spent the first hours in the hotel unable to think clearly. My mind replayed the scene over and over, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lucas and Elena together, their bodies pressed close, their lips locked in that kiss that changed everything. I felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under me. Lucas's betrayal was painful, but Elena's, that one, destroyed me. She was my sister, my own blood, the person I had grown up with, shared secrets and laughter with. And yet, she had been capable of doing this to me. I couldn't understand it. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. I didn't want to look at the screen, but a part of me couldn't resist. I turned it on and saw several missed calls from Lucas, then from Elena, then from my mother. I didn't answer. I turned off the phone again and wrapped myself in the bed's blanket as if it could protect me from the pain. The hours passed slowly, and when night came, my stomach growled with hunger, but I didn't have the strength to get up. Finally, I managed to fall asleep, though my rest was restless, full of blurry images of the betrayal. When I woke up, it was almost noon. I turned on my phone again, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe a part of me still hoped it was all a misunderstanding, a horrible confusion. But what I saw only made me feel worse. More missed calls, more messages. My mother had sent me a long one, full of outrage. Elena is devastated. I can't believe you're doing this during the week of her wedding. How can you be so selfish? Talk to her and fix this immediately. My breathing became irregular as I read those words. My mother didn't know the truth. She didn't know what her youngest daughter had done. She didn't know I wasn't the one who had to fix anything. Rage mixed with pain. I took a deep breath before writing a response. If you really want to know what happened, ask Elena. Ask her what she was doing with Lucas when I found her yesterday. Ask her why I saw her kissing my boyfriend. When you have that answer, we can talk. I pressed send and then turned off my phone again. I knew my mother would take time to respond. She probably wouldn't believe it at first. But I didn't care anymore. I stayed in the hotel a couple more days, unwilling to do anything, unable to even think about the future. Everything I had built with Lucas over the years had crumbled in seconds. And Elena, I never wanted to see her again. Finally, after 3 days of barely leaving the room, my phone vibrated with a new message from my mother. Tell me it's not true. I sighed. Deep down, she didn't want to accept the truth. But it was. I didn't respond. That same night, I made a decision. I couldn't stay hidden forever. I had to face this. And there was one more person who needed to know the truth. Mark, Elena's fiancé. I called him, feeling my heart pounding as the tone rang. When he answered, his voice sounded confused. Hello, are you okay? Your family is worried about you. I closed my eyes for a second before speaking. Mark, there's something I have to tell you. Something you need to know before marrying Elena. I felt him tense on the other end of the line. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I found her kissing Lucas a few days ago. There was a long silence. What? His voice was barely a whisper. What you heard. I saw Elena with my boyfriend. They were kissing in secret. The line remained silent for a long time. Then I heard a heavy exhale. I need to process this. And he hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling partly relieved, but also worried. I didn't know what Mark would do with the information. Days passed, and the day of the wedding finally arrived. I had no intentions of going, but curiosity was eating me alive. That afternoon, my cousin Emma called me with a trembling voice full of excitement. You won't believe what just happened. I sat on the hotel bed, feeling a chill run through my body. What happened? Emma breathed heavily before speaking. Mark canceled the wedding. In front of everyone. My heart skipped a beat. What? Yes. They were at the church. Everything seemed normal. Elena was at the altar, smiling, and Mark was about to say his vows when, suddenly, he said he couldn't do it. I swallowed hard. Did he say why? Yes. Emma's voice filled with emotion. He said he couldn't marry someone who betrayed her own sister, that he couldn't share his life with someone like that. My heart pounded in my chest. Emma kept speaking quickly. Elena started crying. Your parents didn't understand anything. And then Mark looked at your mom and said that if she wanted to know why you disappeared, now she knew. I was in shock. Mark had told everything. He left the church, leaving Elena at the altar crying. I didn't know what to say. I'd imagined many ways this could end, but I never thought Mark would react like this. For the first time in weeks, I felt a deep relief. Emma lowered her voice. Your parents are in shock. Elena is devastated. And you? Are you okay? I remained silent for a moment before responding. I don't know, I admitted. Emma sighed. At least the truth came to light. We hung up and I sat there trying to process everything. I had hoped for justice, but not in such a public and dramatic way. My family now knew the truth. Elena had been exposed. Lucas, I had no idea what had become of him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I took a deep breath and told myself that though my world had shattered into pieces, I had the chance to rebuild it. And this time I would do it without people who didn't deserve to be in it. The day after the canceled wedding, I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but neither was it sadness. It was as if, after weeks of carrying a backpack full of rocks, I had suddenly let it go. Light, but also a bit empty. I turned on my phone and saw that I had more missed calls and messages from my mother. I hesitated to read them, but in the end, my curiosity won. I can't believe you did this. You humiliated your sister in front of everyone. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you for this. I reread the message several times, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. I had humiliated her. I was the one to blame. As if Elena hadn't betrayed herself. As if I had forced Mark to cancel the wedding. My mother was blinded by her favoritism, as always. But this time, I wasn't going to let her make me feel guilty for something that wasn't my fault. I didn't respond. The next thing I saw was a message from my cousin Emma. I hope you're okay. I know this whole thing is crazy, but I just wanted to say that I believe you. You didn't do anything wrong. If you need to talk, I'm here. For the first time in days, I smiled a little. Emma had always been the only one in the family who wasn't blinded by the adoration for Elena. I simply replied, "Thank you." Not sure what else to say. After a while, I decided I couldn't keep hiding in a hotel. I had to go back home and face whatever came. When I got to my apartment, I felt strange crossing the door. It was the same place where I had lived with Lucas, where we had built a routine, where everything had seemed normal until it wasn't. The idea that his presence still lingered in that space deeply unsettled me. I went straight to the closet and started packing all his things into bags. Clothes, shoes, his bathroom items. Everything. I wasn't going to wait for him to come for them. I would leave them at his friend's door or anywhere else. But not here. While doing this, my phone rang again. This time, it was Elena. A chill ran down my spine at the sight of her name on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, a message from her popped up. I know you're enjoying this, but you ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Was she really writing that to me after what she had done? Anger rose in my throat, but it wasn't worth responding to her. If there was one thing I had learned from all this, it was that I couldn't spend any more energy on someone who had never felt remorse for hurting me. I decided the best thing I could do was move on. The following days were strange. I felt like someone who had survived a hurricane and was now walking among the wreckage, trying to find something salvageable. I didn't talk to my family. I didn't talk to Lucas. But little by little, I started to feel stronger. One day, Emma called me again. "Listen, I don't want to involve you in anything, but I heard something I think you should know." I tensed up. "What is it?" She paused before responding. "Lucas tried to talk to Mark after everything that happened. He told him that what you saw didn't mean anything, that it was just a mistake." I felt a knot in my stomach. And what did Mark say? He told him he didn't believe a single word. I bit my lip. "Good," Emma sighed. "I just wanted you to know. It seems Lucas doesn't accept that this is over." After hanging up, I stared at the wall for a long time. I knew that at some point Lucas would try to contact me, and I wasn't wrong. 2 days later, I got a message from him. "Please, let's just talk." I deleted it without responding. Finally, one day I decided to do something symbolic. I took the last memento I had of Lucas, a framed photo of us in the living room, and threw it in the trash. I felt incredibly good doing it. There was nothing more to say. It was time to move on.